Wheels. The great driver of human history. But where do they come from? Where do they go? Is that you, Cotton Eye Joe? How does one make a wheel? Nobody knows. Can we truly declare ourselves more advanced than our horse-drawn ancestors if we know not the methods of turning squares into circles? I am humbled. And so today we set out to do what those who sit upon their perfectly square buttocks call impossible. Today we cast aside cultural taboos and bureaucratic efficiencies. Today we bravely spit in the face of a 10-minute drive to the nearest wheel-bearing hardware store and march headlong into our own collective past to finally, at long last, reinvent the wheel. We do this not in arrogance, nor out of a lack of respect for our own time. No, we undertake this treacherous fool's errand because if we don't, how else can we prove to our cave-dwelling ancestors that we are in fact better than them? So today we once again spit in the face of history. No doubt angering a massive horde of ghosts who set down the old proverb, "Don't reinvent the wheel," only so they could hoard some small bit of knowledge from us. Surely it is a dangerous task we perform today, but with our newfound wheel technology, I'm sure the ghosts of our ancestors won't be able to catch us as we freely cavort across golden fields of wheat upon our newfound, beautiful, shackleless chariots. Our hair freely blowing in the winds of circular progress, no longer crushed beneath the long thumb of adage-based tyranny. I don't mean to brag, but check out this porta-band saw my fiancé bought for me a while back. Just look at those sleek curves. That extendable support. The way those cute little teeth nibble their way through this aluminum like butter. Why, it's almost enough to make a man want to marry a saw like that. But I'm sure there's suitors lined up around the block, just waiting to show off their massive, rigid machining tools for a saw this voluptuous, and I'm stuck here with my flaccid mini lathe and homemade cutting lubricant. A man can dream, though. A man can dream. This aluminum block will eventually form the hub of the pair of wheels we're making today. I've watched about one YouTube video's worth of research for this project, wanting to keep the design loose and agile. Free to make mistakes, with plenty of room to pretend I couldn't have avoided them by watching at least one more video on the subject of wheels before diving headlong into another project and making all the mistakes I could have easily avoided, once again. Of those mistakes, potentially anyway, is this center borehole. Not the bore itself, that is perfect to within 0.005 of an inch as far as I can measure, but rather what the borehole represents, its principles, something we all need a bit more of, I'd say, but that this borehole in particular may have too many of. For this borehole will eventually support the axle these wheels spin around. Since aluminum is relatively soft, this borehole is designed to accept an insert, ideally one made of a low-friction, high-wear-resistant material like bearing bronze. The bearing presses into this borehole, the axle passes through it, then the wheels themselves, through this bearing, spin around the axle. Herein, potentially, lies the design flaw. I have no idea if this is a standard design for wheels. It may very well be. It may very well not be. If this is a standard working design, please disregard this long-winded exploration of potential mistakes, as the mistakes we made were in fact not made. And instead of wasting more time than necessary on planning and research, we actually approached this design with great care and respect for existing wheel design. No further research necessary. Else, how would we have reached a known suitable design, perfected in the long annals of history by those who came before us? Those whom we dare not disrespect by attempting to reinvent their obviously perfected achievements. Unless, of course, this design is seriously flawed, in which case I'm sure we've all learned from our mistakes by now and we can just press on in the face of adversity. The fastidious amongst you may notice that these wheel hubs contain a pair of holes that look suspiciously close together when compared to their compatriot holes. I have it on good authority that there is nothing to worry about, that this was in fact the design all along, despite what the design shows. Surely I didn't just mistake a vice jaw clamping mark for one of the dutifully scribed lines denoting where the spoke holes should have been drilled. Perhaps this this totally planned hole, is for an oil port. Or perhaps it serves as the holding port for our least favorite playing card, that we may turn whatever these wheels power into a makeshift dirt bike. How cool would that be? All those other kids are going to be so jealous that we have a dirt bike. Or perhaps its purpose is that of a small cavity in which we can store a tooth for the tooth fairy as the years get on and we replace these evolutionary abominations with good old George Washington-style wooden teeth, that we may unabashedly partake of all the candy our diabetes-stricken heart yearns for. No fear of dastardly cavities to bring our party to a premature end. Whatever the purpose of this hole, I for one am excited to see what the future has in store for it. For us. For our collective six-hole existence. At long last, we've arrived at the much-heralded climax of this journey, turning this squarish piece of plywood into a circle, as prophesied many moons ago by heretics and vagabonds. For now is the moment of revelation, the moment of no return, the moment that we cross the line between cultural taboo and enlightenment, much like the great thinkers of the past, Galileo, Spinoza, Socrates. Now is the moment we corrupt the youth, bring about a new age of philosophy, ponder the nature of spheres and orbits. Now is the moment that we truly, earnestly, finally, reinvent the wheel. But, much as we asked before, and still have yet to answer, how does one actually turn a square into a circle? Well, much like the Flintstones carving a circle from rock, we use our milling machine, of course. This may look a bit weird, and that's because it is. What we've done here is turn my milling machine into a makeshift lathe. One with considerably less rigidity, but with far more swing than my tiny lathe currently offers. As you can see, this magnanimous achievement is worthy of inscription in the annals of history, as it works perfectly. I said it works perfectly well. It seems that we have a conundrum to solve here. Despite repeated refutations of the reality of the situation, this setup is in fact not very good. The issue lies in the makeshift, low-effort arbor I made to hold the workpiece. When the cutting forces reached sufficient levels, apparently a level far lower than I initially anticipated, the arbor and workpiece loosed their grip on each other, much like Jack and Rose, and the workpiece begins to spin, or rather begins to not spin, while the arbor continues to spin inside of it. To correct this issue, I propose that we try a half-baked, low-effort solution, saving ourselves some precious time. Side project. Side project? Like inheritance machining? No, surely not. We're not getting into side projects, are we? Let's just try some low-effort fixes. Surely this inset nut will solve the issue. Side project. No way. Not happening. We can barely get these main projects out in a reasonable amount of time. We don't need to go opening the floodgates to an infinite horde of side projects. Side project. No, this inset nut is going to work out just fine, and we can quickly move on from cutting the outside of this perfectly circular circle to cutting the inside of this perfectly circular circle. Side project. No, please, the commitment. Side project. Despite my protestations, this arbor is significantly better than the makeshift one from before. Rather, I should say it's infinitely better, considering this arbor actually works. The resultant circle cutting was quick and efficient. No more undesired lack of spinning, only desirable spinning to fill our days from here on out. There's not much to be spoken about these spokes poking about. Each spoke pokes about 3 inches out in a manner most bespoke for a spoking, poking, bespoking spoke about. The pitfall of haphazard spoke poking may be apparent to you. In case it isn't, let me tell you of the pang of anxiety hammering these spoking pokes into place gave me. It wasn't the hammering itself that concerned me, but rather how these spoke holes sat. Haphazardly drilled by hand, as none of my drilling machines were capable of drilling these poking, spoking holes. By this, I mean that the holes themselves have some measure of angle to their circular breast stroke. These angles, when spoked, poked the wheel hub out of alignment in a manner most provoking. To be brought to ruin by the most simple of mechanisms, the humble wood spoke, I was sure my fate was yoked. Surely these wheels, with angular hubs and tight-fitting bearings, would never meet in agreement on which way the axle should choke. The great binding of ways, surely my death stroke. The heresy of my wanton disrespect for the old adage lay keystroked before me. Naked, vulnerable, ashamed. My hubris caused me to disregard the ancients' dire warning, sure that they were only malice provoked. But perhaps they left such perceived tyranny as guidance after all, out of respect for their offspring, a manner of summarizing all the pain they knew lie in these bespoke poking spokes. Attempting to warn those with sense enough to listen, do not waste your life on a sick joke. Trivial though the wheel may seem, ages of sunstroke we gentlefolk croak. The two heretofore assumed matching wheels have slightly different angles to their wheel hub because these spokes are hand-drilled and eye-whacked to length. A deviation small is possibly tolerated, but a deviation of any significant amount must surely see each wheel attempting to independently twist the shared axle in whichever way it sees fit, heedless of the shared fate and required coordination between its closest neighbor. Unity comes when we accept others for who they are, not when we try to all meet the same exacting standard. For who amongst us isn't hand-drilled, reamed by the imperfect and unsteadied world, perfection but illusion when magnified close enough? Adherence to the mold, not but fallacy, simplistic wishes of those who cannot abide the deeper thought required to see the deviations in us all. If we wish to turn about the great axles of life, we must learn tolerance. Else we find that those closest to us, those most intimately connected by some shaft or bearing of our own choosing, be too rigid, too intolerant, too unforgiving, and the great binding of life cement us evermore, forever frozen in our lonely, rigid minds. But lo, and behold, the wheels spin. My momentary lapse in confidence rewarded, for the world is far more beautiful than I give it credit. Such spinning of the wheel, such grace responding to the lightest touch. How can such horrific misalignment as these hubs produce such beauty? Perhaps, in the end, these spinning wheels offer us a message, that our ancestors truly did wish the best for us, but that we may also find some measure of produce in the recreation of their ways. Not in disrespect for their effort, for we do not create a wheel better than they, but that we may appreciate their effort all the more. For now we know their travails, we know their sacrifices in minute detail. May they who invented the wheel find honor in the spinning of these wobbled, crooked, unsteady achievements we reinvent in their image today. Was honoring our ancestors sufficient reason to undertake the construction of these wheels, though? Should we not yield greater honor by having our collective achievements brought to more purpose than honorific alone? And so one must ask, what will spin about gracefully perched atop these wheels? Oh, you'll see. You'll all see soon enough. Ha 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 ha.